Welcome to the Warren Cycling Podcast. My name is Dean Warren. I'm in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Wow. And I'm Randy Warren, and I'm in what was supposed to be Snowmageddon here in Asheville, but we didn't have any snow. Yeah, they closed everything down for the day. But yeah, Asheville, North Carolina. So nothing nearly as exciting as Brazil.
Being in south of the equator, it's summer here, and it's full on summer too. Hot 90s, sweltering humidity, and chances of thunderstorms every day. That's pretty much summer weather, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's humid summer weather.
Yeah.
Like you get in Florida where you live too. So
Right.
you just
But not like Los Angeles area or California where they've
oh
had torrential rains. That's not typical winter weather, is it?
no. And so normally I would do one of my
You used to
camps
do your camps in Slow in February,
Triplex
right?
racing. Yeah, usually in March, but and so we probably wouldn't have been affected by this wave of weather, except that it saturates the ground, and there's some places we go that don't have dry creek beds. And then the occasional year where the ground's saturated, they'll be wet. And once the ground gets saturated, the roads will stay wet for months and months, too. So then we have to and sometimes it's pretty deep. So I've got pictures from some camp years where people usually shoulder their bicycle and then have to hike through the water because it's above the bottom bracket when you ride through it. You don't want to get your hubs or bottom bracket submerged. So if I'm in a gravel race or in an adventure road riding and the water's that deep, I'll suggest people shoulder their bike. So we won't have that because this year we're not doing the camp in San Luis Obispo. We're doing it in Asheville, so we won't have to worry about that weather. But I feel bad though because it's I guess when 95 when I lived there, we had a really, really bad too where it closed down the roads and was streets were flooded and stuff in San Luis Obispo. And I talked to a friend there the other day and he said it's like that or worse.
Yeah.
So it's really bad. And then it's just hard. So I mean, from a cycling perspective, makes it harder to ride for sure because you can't ride those days. But I remember in 95 it wasn't that long until it dried up enough you could go out and ride again without having too much damage. But I think they've had wave after wave after wave with this one, so it's probably a little worse than then.
Yeah, well, it is January 13th, 2023, episode 314 of the Warren Cycling Podcast. And it also, you were talking about California and your camps with the weather chances. Back when the Tour of California started, they did start racing in February originally, and it seemed like it was raining a lot, and it wasn't such nice weather when that was a big draw, was to come to California in the winter for some sunshine.
Yeah, that was it. They happened to hit a few years, and I was just listening to NPR and they're talking about how California goes through these drought cycles and then rain cycles where multiple years of drought and then multiple years where it's wetter. And they happen to hit one of those multiple years where it was wetter. And so it still means it's dry for 9-10 months of the year. It doesn't hardly rain. But those 2 or 3 months that it does rain, it can rain quite a bit and get cooler. And so you're right. It was much cooler. And one year, was it Palomar Mountain, I think, down by Escondido, near where your son Taylor lives. There was snow, considerable amount of snow on the mountain just slightly before the race started. And I was down there for a conference and I wanted to ride up it and you couldn't do it. It was so snowed in, and I did see some people that were scouting it out for the Tour of California who did ride it, but they had a vehicle at top that they could climb into and it was warm and they could come down. But in just the vehicle I had, I was afraid to even drive up there. So you're right. You think of sunny California and it generally is, but once in a while you get weather that makes it hard to ride outside. And there aren't too many people there if I set up to ride inside very much too. So it probably affects them training and early season practice and stuff like that quite a bit. Although I've seen Taylor still getting a lot of good miles in, so I don't think it's affecting him too much.
Yeah, it's been raining some, but he's done some big rides for sure. I get emails now from the cycling club that we joined in Sarasota, the Sarasota Manatee Cycling Club, of different rides, and I always know when it's going to be bad weather for Florida standards because they start canceling rides left and right when it's going to be below 50 degrees and maybe wind or rain. So yeah,
bad weather not meaning even maybe rain, but also just below 50 degrees. That can be pretty funny. I was not going to ride yesterday because we were supposed to get cold starting yesterday morning, and then it shifted to yesterday afternoon, so we had 60 degrees and dry in the morning. So I changed my plans and jumped on the bike and got a ride in yesterday morning too, unplanned, to get another 60-degree day in. But we're supposed to have that again next week too. So it's not bad here, but I know a lot of other places are getting hammered pretty good by snows, of course, by the New York area, Buffalo, of course, and then rain, and hopefully this will help get California a little bit out of their drought situation, because that's catastrophic, and you need years of this kind of weather to really get them out of it. But it
It's
can
going to
maybe make a
help some,
yeah.
although it's
Yep.
going to do a lot of damage in doing the help too. So
When it has like this, where it rains so much so quickly, yeah, it makes it really hard. Yeah, yeah, and it does affect. I mean, like early season racing, there usually they do road races starting now. Like this weekend, maybe they usually do one up by Santa Maria, and then they'll start doing. I know they're doing the Chinese New Year's when I did Snelling road race, a big road race up in was Snelling. Oh shoot, anyway, well, a big road race in Northern California too that I won one year. I should remember the name of it. But anyway, and so those races, even some pretty big races, happen pretty early in the year, and oh, I do remember right time I did a really famous race. I think about what the name of that one was too. I've been an Easter weekend, in Northern California too, and it's a kind of a Roubaix race with rough roads, not like gravel, but rough roads and stuff like that too. And I remember one
Chico
year from
stage
that.
race had a stage that was on some gravel roads, and
Yeah,
that comes pretty early.
I've done some road races in Chico, yeah, that we definitely had some dirt roads in there too. So yeah, 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 and so that makes, well, if it's dry and dirt, it's one thing, but if it's wet and dirt, it's a whole nother thing to have to factor into your racing.
Yeah, well, one place that it doesn't matter, and even if it's rainy, it's even better, is the cyclocross racing going on in Belgium or the Netherlands. And there was another World Cup, but Tom Pidcock didn't race, did he, in that Zondervan World Cup race? I don't believe he was on the start line, so it was just the big two, then Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. And fortunately, van der Poel's back's been bothering him enough that a couple laps in, if it's hurting him, he still finishes second probably, but he's a distant, like a minute behind Wout van Aert to not contest the win like he was earlier when they were coming in to the finish, neck and neck. Some of the races, so Wout van Aert's showing him as the big favorite now for the World Championship race in Hoogerheide coming up first weekend in February, so about 3 more weeks away. They're both going, I think, taking a break now and doing some road team camp or road team preparations. So I guess that means probably traveling to Spain. So I think Europeans always have that fortune that, especially, they can live at home still if they want to train. I mean, even Alexander Kristoff, we saw he's going to be 35 this year, still racing back with the Continental team, the Uniacs, right, this year. But I see his Strava. I follow him. I don't follow that many pros on Strava, but I follow a few, and he still rides in Norway most of the time. He prefers to live at home, so he's able to. But they can train to live at home, and then if they have a camp in Spain to Belgium, it'd be like us having living in Tennessee and having a camp in Florida, maybe, I don't know, or the other way around. The distance wise, it's not that far, relative speaking, so it's easier for them to travel without changing time zones even. And so you think that the cyclocross guys taking a break, that they're going that far to go on the road, it's not really that big of a distance or so tiring for them to change and go back then to cyclocross to fine tune for the World Championships.
Yeah, and Mathieu van der Poel, I think, is using it as a rest for his back too, because his back's really been bothering him, and he said the road doesn't bother him at all. So he gets the miles in, and he rests his back, and then hopefully he gets ready to race, the World Championships. I did see too that he was saying he doesn't really know exactly what the injury is. He said he heard it during the Olympics, and it just it's still causing him trouble. He thought after a year it was going to be better, and then it still flared up once in a while, but he doesn't really know exactly why it's hurting. And so he's hoping that it holds out until the next Olympics in 2024 in Paris. And then after that, he might stop racing off road just because of his back. But he thinks, on the road right now, at least, it's not giving him problems.
Yeah, I wonder if races like Flanders or more so Paris-Roubaix would bother his back, because that's a much rougher surface. But he has both those races on his program. He did release his program for the racing this year. No 2 Grand Tours. Doesn't look like he's going to solely focus on the Tour de France, which he has not finished, starting twice before. And he'll start out with Strade Bianche, which he's won before, Tirreno Adriatico, where he was like pretty spectacular last year, wasn't it? Where he was super long breaks and just lighten up the race. And And then he'll do the Spring Classics and Tour as a big, and then the World Championships. It comes pretty much after that in August this year.
Yeah, much earlier than it has been lately. Kind of harkens back to the late '80s and early '90s, I think. But yeah, it'll be much different. And he said that I mean, last year he had a really good Giro and a disastrous Tour, and so I think realized he really couldn't do both, especially when you do World Championships right after the Tour. Then if you were still tired, and he said he was still tired at the Tour from the Giro.
Yeah, but
the way
he
he
raced
raced
the Giro in a way that would make anyone tired.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, it wasn't conservative at all. So yeah, yep. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, he's won Flanders twice, and Wout van Aert has not won it. So we know that's certainly something that he's targeting. So it's it's good that they're both going to be at those kind of races. It seems like they're going to match up a lot. Of course, there's many more people too. It's not like cyclocross where basically
that just those two are going to be battling it out with Tim Pidcock trying to. Now, lots of other dynamics, more team tactics that come in play a lot more. Cyclocross team tactics are not so much. I mean, some, but
in some situations, but nothing at all like road racing.
But I would still like to see those two. I mean, they did come to the line in Flanders a couple of years ago. Yeah. But sometimes they cancel each other out too. They mark each other out. So.
Yeah. And not even him too, because they kind of canceled each other out in some ways. Last year Flanders with Pogačar, but then he canceled Pogačar out, but then they canceled himself out. He still got the win. Pogačar got fourth, so you're right, because they negative raced for sure at the end there. They had a huge gap. They could have easily came in and two up sprinted it, but they cat and moused it to the point that they got caught, right at the line pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Well, we got all that to look forward to, and we have the Tour Down Under starting in just a few days, right? The 15th?
Yeah.
So a couple of days from now?
I think 2 days from now. If I remember right, the 15th?
Yeah. 2 days, which would be almost like tomorrow, because Australia's so far ahead of the United States in time zone. But it's been a couple of years since they've had the Santos Tour Down Under.
Yeah.
It's probably exciting for them to be. I mean, they had the World Championships, so that was the first, I guess, big professional cycling event they had since the pandemic, and they probably are happy to get back to it. But they've had their national championships, and it's been pretty hot there. And I don't know, is it a surprise? It was Luke Plop getting the road race win against a very strong what is it? Alusu? Is that their second part of their sponsor? Alusu, I think, right?
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to start practicing the new team names. I guess we'll get it down by the Spring Classics, right?
Yeah, I was actually looking real quick on the Tour Down Under there. It's Jake. Alula. So yeah, I did check. It's definitely L's, Alula. So yeah. Yeah, and actually the Women's World Tour, they're both World Tour events, so that's huge, and that means the teams are always supposed to be there. And I think this is one of those ones that everybody has to come to. It's not like the ones that you can opt out of if you want to. So it's a huge lineup. And the women's one starts the 15th. The men's starts the 17th. So we'll have a couple days.
Do the men still have a criterium style race, like the day before it starts, or just before?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's part. I'd let's look and see, but I've not heard that they're taking that out. So you're right. That's a kind of a different thing, because crit racing is not very popular in many countries except for the U.S. and Australia and New Zealand. So they're really big crit countries as well too. And so they had a crit national championship, which of course isn't on the World Tour calendar, but they have that gets a significant amount of press. That happened just a couple of days before the road race.
In Australia.
And then in Australia, yep. And then so the prologue that they'll have, I think, happens the day after a crit race too, and it's a different race for sure. Not all the World Tour teams are doing the crit for sure, but a lot of crit specialist guys or guys keeping a crit background, they'll get out there, and of course, certain Australians want to get out there and get a get a win. Hopefully, like Caleb Ewan really wants to get a victory in early, and so sometimes that's where he gets it. I know he's racing for the UNISA Australia team too this year. He's not racing for Lotto, so in this race, so it's an Australian team. So he might not have the same kind of lead-out train that he would have.
No, but he doesn't necessarily need a lead-out train so much, does he? I mean, he's pretty
No,
good at
he's a good surfer.
surfing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Although last year he seemed like he had a couple of crashes surfing that he hadn't had so much in the past. So you never know. But yeah, he's usually pretty good at it. And one of those crashes, I remember, it seemed like he was just looking down and got tired because he's gotten so good now at uphill sprints and getting over hills to get to sprints they normally might not, and it probably adds another layer of tiredness to what he's doing. So he has to increase his
Concentration.
awareness while being tired. I think in those kind of sprints. But yeah, yeah. My guess is he didn't stay with the pack on the climbs. He did, he got dropped once in the national championship road race, and then he caught back on, and then he got dropped again, and then couldn't catch back on. So, um, he's climbing well, certainly again for a sprinter. Not as good as the climbers, obviously, but I think he's in pretty good fitness.
Right. Well, he's really shown his climbing ability, I guess, in the big Milan San Remo one-day race where it's
Oh
a
yeah,
tough climb at the end of a long race to get over the Cipressa and the Poggio to get to the finish, and he's shown he can do that. It just hasn't worked out with
he's won the field
right,
sprint before.
yeah,
Yeah,
riders taking flyers and people looking at each other and not chasing when he's not going to chase because he's trying to sprint. So
yeah. Which is it was one thing great about Mount San Remo is that happens where you think everybody's all together coming into Poggio and that's going to be the it, and then it ends up not being it because people will take flyers. So.
Right. Well, you got that to look forward to. The first of the monuments starting at the beginning part of March, which is it's not much more than 6 weeks away, really 7 weeks away. So
I know. Yeah.
it's coming fast and furious.
And because I think the Tour Down Under wasn't a World Tour last year and the year before because of COVID, right? They took it off just so
Australian only race pretty much.
Yeah, and now it's like this will be the first time in quite a few years they have all these big names. I mean, there's a lot of big names there too, and then some of these guys, were up and comers maybe maybe haven't done it before, so it might be the first time for some people that are decent stars now, but their first experience down Tour Down Under. And certainly it's nice to go down there because you get warm weather, and then usually they would stay for the Cadel Evans Road Race, which is not a World Tour event. So
I
I'm
don't
not
think
sure
it's happening this year, is it?
happening, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So, because it makes it, if you're going to go all that way, you want to make sure you get, there's things there. Oh, no, it is happening. Yep.
It is.
I'm sorry. The 29th. Yep.
The Great Ocean Road Race, or is that a different one?
Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is a World Tour race too.
Oh.
So it dropped off the calendar, I think 1 or 2 years, and then didn't happen at all during COVID. But yeah, back on. Yep. 129. And it's a 1-point World Tour. So
Excellent.
Highest you can get, which makes sense again, because if teams are investing all this money going down there for the Tour Down Under, if they can stay, it's only 1 week later after it finishes. So you stay one more week and then you get that in. And then the next World Tour race doesn't happen until the UAE Tour, which is a month later. So, it gives people a chance they can spend 3 weeks down there, maybe 4 weeks getting some good training in too, and makes it worth them making that long trip.
Did you see, I was going to ask you, we were talking about the Australian National Championships, and we talked about Luke Plapp winning the road race, but did you see who won the criterium? Didn't he win both last year?
He won last year. He didn't win the road race. Luke Plapp was a defending champion in the road race. So, but he won the defending champion of the crit won the crit again this year. I don't know. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but.
All right. Yeah, we were talking, I think, before Pro Cycling Stats has kind of changed their format a little bit. It's easier to go backwards.
I don't think they have the crit though in it, do they? Because it's not a UCI. Well, maybe I don't think it's
Well, maybe because there's so many Australian, New Zealand races and national championships in China took place too, back the day after Christmas. I see, but I don't see the criterium race.
Yeah, I don't think they listed on there just because it's not a UCI race. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we didn't talk so much about that Zondervan World Cup race.
I didn't see it. I didn't watch that one. So you tell me about it.
Oh yeah. Well, I just read pretty much what I said earlier. A couple laps in about. Was able to. I mean, he rode pretty flawlessly the race anyway, but he was able to get a gap and crease the pressure, and Mathieu van der Poel just didn't able to respond with his back bothering him like it was. So, but I was gonna look at what happened though in the women's race, because I think it was
probably more exciting as usual.
yeah,
Well,
because all the Dutch women, it started out with Van Empel winning a lot, and then put Peterson, and then they had Shirin. I think it was Shirin Van Anrooy that won. And she's another.
what's
like
the site you're looking at again? I should write it down because I keep forgetting what the new site is we're looking at for some of those cyclocross results.
Firstcycling.com.
First.
Firstcycling.com has.
I did a real quick
because
check.
you can pull up the cyclocross. You can pull up
Yeah.
UCI cyclocross, everything.
It's nice, yes. You look at today and latest results, and it's just it's a nice, it's a good site for. I mean, we get a lot of it from Pro Cycling Stats for sure, and that helps a lot. But for things that aren't in the Pro Cycling Stats, anything other than road, this is definitely very helpful. So.
Right, you just have to remember that the dates are month or day first, then month.
Day,
so you
day
don't,
month,
you get confused the other way around. So yeah, Shirin Van Anrooy won over Peterson and Van Empel. So all of the three 20-year-olds battling it out there with Lucinda Brand coming in fourth, and Celinda Carmen Alvarado, who has been riding well as well lately. But riders like Annemarie Worst, who used to be at the top of the game, or Senna Kant, or even Marianne Vos are much further down, taking really a back seat to the young 20-year-olds that have been dominating most of the women's races this year, with Lucinda Brand kind of hanging best of the behind them a lot of times, but still not racing as well as those young ones.
And you wonder, because they're more experienced, they know how to ramp it up right before World Championships. So they're racing enough now to still get a really front row or second row start spot. And then what's going to happen then? Can they time it such? Yeah, I think maybe. So it'll be exciting. We're not gonna. I think
it's
and
putting
we've seen
a
this
lot
before
of
too.
importance all into the World Championship race.
Yeah.
I mean, which I guess as you coach your riders, you definitely have the peaks of the target races, but you also be careful that you can't make one race make your whole season, can you? I mean, you got to have.
Well, you can, but that's a big risk because if something goes wrong in that race, too. And some of these people are starting the season, different series, World Championships. So someone like Isabert probably doesn't think that he's got the best chance in the world at World Championships, so he targets a couple of series. I think he's still first place in the one that goes on cumulative time, and so they different people target different things, and certainly people come in. Famously, Stibar one time came in, hadn't done any racing, I think, crosswise, and still won cross worlds, and people can criticize him like crazy. Hey, come on, you're not a real cross racer anymore, you're all doing all road. But he still won cross worlds coming in last minute to do that, so that can happen. And even Marianne Vos, there's been a couple of years where she's not done a lot of cross and has come in for a week or two, or she does occasionally some races so that she has decent points, so she's not starting too far back in the field too. But
right, and she's done really well then.
Really well, yeah, just with becoming in fresh like that too. So some of the people that aren't doing quite so well now, that again are racing just to get enough points to be able to have good positions still in World Championships and other races, then it's a strategy that plays off for someone who's more experienced for sure, better than it does for somebody who's new. And so it makes things interesting, which is great. And the women's side, again, more than the men's side. The men's side doesn't happen quite as much now as it does on the women's side.
No, and I'm curious though, is the national championships, that must be coming up pretty soon for all the cyclocross nations.
Yeah, usually be like now. Yeah, like this weekend maybe. I haven't seen, you're right, much about it, but usually, yeah, because when we held our national championships in the United States at the same time that the world generally does, I've been getting some flashback memories on my Facebook saying, because I went to the Worlds and I went to nationals sometimes here, and then of course we went to Worlds too, a couple of different places too. But nationals championships, I think that when they were held in the January, it was like this week. So
yeah, I don't know. It looks like Luxembourg, Portugal, and Spain might be having theirs, but maybe not till the next weekend will be the big cyclocross nations like Belgium and Netherlands.
Yeah, it could be. All
right. Well, we were talking last time on our podcast. It was the French National Track Championships, but we didn't follow up on any of that because it doesn't even appear in any of our news feeds what's going on.
But
So,
First Cycling does have track though. So let's do that. Say in there. No. Their last year is 2022, I think. They don't have nothing from 23 yet. So yeah. Huh. It makes it hard, right? If you're a track, I mean, sure you can find them. UCI calendar probably shows them on that one, but
you got to dig
it's
it.
just not. Yeah. Track definitely gets the short chapters. It's one of those things that, when the Olympic years, it gets a lot of attention, and other than that, it doesn't get as much. And that's why the Track Nations League, is pretty good, because they did get a lot of attention for that, very small series with only a few riders in it. But it was very fan friendly, and of course Jennifer Valente won the women's endurance, and so that made us more interested in it. But it did bring track some more prominence that they don't always have.
Yeah, I see First Cycling also shows birthdays, but they don't arrange them as far as how many points they've earned with the Pro Cycling Stats points system that they use. They just list the birthdays. It looks like
That's not
pretty much alphabetical order. So yeah, it's not as fun at all, is it?
no, not as fun.
No. All right. Well, I don't know. Are we ready to go for birthdays already?
Well, it's a couple of other little things too. So Lopez did sign with the Colombian team.
Yeah, Superman.
And has it been official that Nairo Quintana also signed for them yet?
Oh, I didn't see that. I haven't heard about that. I thought you were going to talk about the other news of Thibaut Pinot going to retire at the end of this year.
Retire at the end of this year, yep. Too. They came on, yep. Yeah. No, but so Lopez signed for a Canadian team. I mean, not Canadian team, a Colombian team.
Yeah.
And he's still professing his innocence. And he says if you look at his biological passport, you see no anomalies in it, and that he's not a doper, and he's is really still upset about getting cut from Astana, and that's
it seems like Astana is one of the teams that wouldn't be so concerned. Maybe I don't know if that's fair to say, but they don't seem to be.
Well, yeah, they've had a history of hiring riders, giving them a second chance.
Yeah.
So,
oh.
yeah, but and then so I mean, if Lopez and Quintana, who also had the tramadol positive too last year, which is kind of a weird one too.
Team Medellin doesn't care though, right?
Hey, so I think that their team now is they're like they're one of those teams that wants to be the underdog but have a chance to surprise people, and so this gives them a chance with two amazing riders. To be honest, I mean that if they're on top of their games, they can compete in any Grand Tour. They can make their mark for sure. It could be a big deal.
For sure. Well, I just remembered the Vuelta a España. They just announced their route. Did you see that?
I didn't see it. I saw that it's super climbing heavy.
10
stage has
finishes.
Yeah.
You got a stage that has 10 categories climbed. They're mostly Cat 3 climbs, but still 10 climbs in a stage. Looks like they're starting out with a couple stages in Barcelona, which is nice for me because it's a place that I could fly to and maybe see the beginning of the race. That super climbing heavy, I guess, huh? With 10 summit finishes.
Yeah, so it's going to be, they said it's a throwback to some of the years. And I remember some years used to be actually relatively flat. I mean, other years it was
like back in the early 2000s, they used to race on highways too, and it was pretty boring. And they've really spiced up the race and made it super exciting. Yeah,
I remember John Vandevelde telling me that his son Christian would call them one year from the Volta and said, "Dad, I'm in my 5311, all out single file for hours and hours and hours on these highways, and the whole pack stays together. You can't get dropped from the pack because then you're just cut off. You lose tons of time in that too. So they would just be super fast races on the highways, and the riders didn't like it very much either. So that's definitely changed.
Yeah, well,
I did see too. So like, there's a headline: Simon Clark tests positive for COVID-19. We're so conditioned now to just think, oh my gosh, it's a doping positive, but it's COVID-19. So it's
just was on the podium there at the Australian
second place.
Race,
second place in the national championship. Yeah. So they say he could recover in time to race on Tuesday because UCI uses that COVID test where they test your antibodies and you have to be at a certain level.
how much
that you
big of a
consider
load that you're
contagious.
taking. I wonder
Right.
if they're still
Yeah.
taking. Everyone's got to take tests to keep up with it then, or they're not just testing if you have some symptoms.
My guess is that they're making everybody test at
Yeah,
the
it sounds
start.
like it.
Yeah, I think they were doing the start and then the rest days of the Grand Tour certainly, and I think big stage races they were doing it at the start at least, and if you had a rest day maybe then too. So yeah, I think they're still trying to get on top of it, and it's still an issue worldwide. And but they are being more sophisticated now in terms of like knowing if you're contagious or not, at least having an idea, good idea if you're contagious or not. Because if you are contagious, then and it's certainly, I mean, people ride all the time with stomach bugs and colds, and that gets passed around among teams sometimes. You hear a team all got sick because someone had the flu or something like that too, and so you want to limit it for sure, and the possible consequences of COVID are potentially greater than it would be for the flu, although the flu kills a ton of people each year as well. So anyway, they want to be careful and stuff too, but yeah, we're not done seeing riders being not in races perhaps because of positive COVID-19 tests.
Yeah, well, you did mention in Australia at the Tour Down Under a lot of big names there, but we didn't get into any specifics. So I was a little curious, like which Americans might be racing there. And I see for
Yeah.
Ineos Grenadiers, Magnus Sheffield, who had such a great year last year, he'll be racing in the Tour Down Under. And Ineos, man, they've got Geraint Thomas, both Ethan and Leo Hayter, and then Lucas Plapp. So along with Ben Swift, so they're looking pretty strong for this race. The other American I saw was from EF Education Easy Post. Sean Quinn will be racing. They've got Alberto Bettiol as their one rider with the one at the end, which is usually signifies their team leader. So
And you would think that's for the overall. I think it's for stages because Bettiol can climb pretty well, but and I'm not sure what the courses.
Overall,
Huh?
maybe. Yeah.
Overall, yeah.
Well, Chris Froome's supposed to start.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
Simon
and
Simon Clark's team, the Israel Premier Tech.
Yeah, and Rowan Dennis, of course, is Australian. He's going to be on Jumbo Visma as their leader, and so that's interesting because he's been in that leadership role sometimes in the past, and it's been, something that he relishes sometimes. And
Yeah, one Australian and the rest all Dutch riders.
Yeah, Robbie Gessing is getting up there. How old is Gessing now? 30. I want to say 30. I think he might not be as old as that. 36. Yeah, 36. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
and he's been racing great lately too. So he's,
a lot of Australians get a chance to be the leader. Bora Hansgrohe has Jai Hindley. Of course, he is worthy of a leader, like winning the Giro before, right?
Yeah.
And then Chris Hamilton leading DSM, Team DSM.
UAE Emirates has Jay Vine and George Bennett.
Yeah.
2 Australians, and then they also have Michael Vink and Michael Vink is Australian as well, and then Finn Fisher Black too. So a couple. They're Australian heavy team for sure. Yeah. But George Bennett has been team leader before. Jay Vine, I think kind of got the leadership role last year, but
George Bennett is New Zealander though.
Oh right, yeah, New Zealander. Right. Their flag is so close.
They are close.
That's why Jay Vine is the leader.
That's right. Caden Groves, Elvis Dukanek. He's a fast finisher. So it'll be definitely worth watching, or you can watch it in the middle of the night if you're having trouble sleeping in the U.S.
Yes, they're late night races for us for sure too. Yeah. But it is World Tour racing and it is fun. So the good thing about this kind of racing is that you can read about it in the morning to see what happened the day before. And if you want to watch it then because there's exciting times, you can just jump around to those exciting parts of the race and still see that and not have to spend the whole time on some of the stages that might not have a lot of dynamic racing in them the whole time.
Right. And just see some Australian scenery, although they pretty much race around the same area the whole time. You don't get to see as much of Australia as you would in maybe a big national tour.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, the parts that are populated in Australia are relatively condensed too. So there's not like France where there's stuff going on every place, or Italy where there's stuff going on every place, or Spain, where every place. Australia is pretty remote for a lot of the country.
Yeah, that's for sure. Big distances too between those places.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, you'd have to have
any country that's a whole continent.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Can imagine the tour of Australia, you'd have like 300-mile stages.
You have to have like multiple rest days to do the transfers.
No, they should ride it.
like the old time Tour de France.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Throwback tour.
Yeah.
And the
Which
Outback.
I just let you know too. I'm still reading Road to Valor, which is about Gino Bartali. And then I saw at our local used bookstore Fallen Angel, which is about Fausto Coppi. And so I picked that up because in the Gino Bartali book, they talk about the rise of Fausto Coppi and how that kind of threatened Gino's dominance in Italian cycling and stuff like that too. And then, so I'm guessing it's going to be kind of like almost a sequel in some ways too. They're going to have some overlap and stuff too. So it's always fun to find some good cycling books to read. And I've trouble the time getting through them, but I've been reading them lately during Matthew's Taekwondo, my son's Taekwondo lessons and stuff too. So at least gives me a couple times a week to be able to do some reading about some of the history of cycling and some of the famous guys who, and actually too, remember the first big Alfredo Binda.
I was just going to say, yeah, because at one time in our podcast we
right.
didn't know this multiple world champion, Giro winner, one of the greatest Italian cyclists.
Yeah,
Thought it
and he was
like a pasta sauce. Is that what you kind of referred to for Alfredo Binda? Yeah.
And he was the coach of the Italian team, because back in the 40s that you used to race as teams in the national teams in the Tour de France. And so in the 1948 tour, which was a comeback year for Bartali, and so he won in 37, I think, and then in 47 after the war, and no one gave him a chance to win after the war. They thought he was just old, washed up, never had a chance. And Alfredo Binda was the coach of the Italian team at that time. And so he's involved in this story as well too. And so our cycling podcast, ignorance about Binda at first, and then revelation about how great of a rider he was, is helping me in my understanding of the Road to Valor in the Gino Bartali story. So
very interesting. Well, if you're ready to shift to birthdays, there's quite a few Italians towards the top of the list celebrating today on the 13th of January their birthday, including at the very top of the list, recently retired Giovanni Visconti. 40 years old today.
Yeah, and the weird thing for me is that Bernal is the second person
Egan
on the list.
Bernal, Tour de France winner.
So that means Visconti, you'd think, he must have been a prolific winner throughout his career in order to be able to have more points than Bernal. But Bernal's 26 this year, hasn't raced nearly as long, and
hasn't raced
Visconti's
so
40.
much the last. Well, I mean, the COVID pandemic, curtailed a lot of races, and then his injury also then set him back.
But Visconti was a winner for sure, a good rider, but just really consistently good for a lot of years, since 2005.
Yeah, I got to photograph him winning one of his Giro stages in 2013. He came in solo. Lots of celebrating. Going to the line, which is amazing. And then it was one of those races where the second place finisher didn't realize there was someone out the front, so I got to see two victory celebrations.
Yeah. So he was definitely he raced for small teams for a long time. And 13 years racing for Movistar, so a huge team there. But turned pro with Domina Vacanzi and Milram was but they were only a pro team to then, and then Quick Step Interject, which is also only a pro team then too. So it took him a while to get to the World Tour in 2012, but he was a super quality rider, and then he kind of finished the season too on Bardiani, CFS, Bianzi, so smaller teams as well.
But the way the points are stacked, like we were talking last podcast about the UCI changing a little bit as far as how many points are awarded for the big races compared to the smaller races. It affected these teams now that they have to have so many points to stay in the World Tour. But Egan Bernal, if you look at his palmares compared to Visconti's, Tour de France overall winner, Giro d'Italia overall winner, Paris-Nice overall winner, Tour de Suisse overall winner, Tour of California overall winner, same as Visconti, 2 stage wins in the Giro, and he's far behind him in the points, which seems crazy. So.
But just tells you Visconti was getting points throughout his career. Right. It was something. He wasn't just a domestique the whole time. He was obviously getting good finishes, consistently. Nothing near Bernal. Bernal, in terms of his accomplishments, are just stellar, and we hope that he returns to that kind of glory this year to make the Tour de France even more interesting. But yeah, it's it just shows longevity. Sometimes has its rewards, and certainly did for Visconti. But for now, maybe if he races till age 40, he'll have quite a few more points. So
Yeah, well, third on the list, though, we have just 25 years old, celebrating her birthday today, Leanne Lippert, the German, the national champion racing for Movistar, and she's racked up a lot of high-quality finishes, winning also a stage there, or winning the Cadel Evans women's race back in 20, winning the Lotto Belgian Tour in 2018. So, wow, 2018, she's 25. She was pretty young.
yeah.
20 years old back then, winning that. A lot of top 5 finishes. So happy birthday to Leanne Lippert, just 25 today. So she's got.
And she was been a pro since 17, and she was on Sunweb for 4 years. Then DSM, which basically took over for Sunweb, and then Movistar, signed through 25. So
right.
Yeah.
Celebrating her
high
birthday as well.
Potential, for sure.
Oh well, we got 2 more Italians in the top 5 here. Fausto Bertoglio, overall winner of the Giro d'Italia. Wow, we get names that I didn't know. Won a Grand Tour, and Fausto Bertoglio, 74 today, won 1975. Also the Volta Catalunya, besides the Giro d'Italia.
Yeah. In again, it's good. That helps us a little bit too in terms of 74-year-old, and then we jump down to even Daniel Oss, who's seems like he's even older than 36. He's been racing for a long time too. I started with Liquigas in 2009.
Yeah, and he's been a right-hand man teammate for many of those years with Peter Sagan.
I'd say, right? All the years maybe? Because Sagan started with Liquigas too. Oh, of course he raced for BMC for a lot of years. So
and I did get a photo of Daniel also winning because he won the stage at the USA Pro Challenge in 2011. When that he got in there, so a couple birthday celebrating today who I've seen win races. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any Americans on the list today?
I saw one earlier. Had to go pretty far down. Might have to refresh it again.
I saw Malaysian
riders that the flag looks. That's
Michael Hermelin. Michael Hermelin. He's still racing. 22 years old, and doesn't have much information on him. So he got National Championship Road Race DNF last year. It's his only listing for that. So.
All right. Well, we will reconvene again. Maybe before I get back from Brazil. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I'm still going to be here for another more than a week and a half. I don't think I can come back to the 25th of January, so all the way through the Tour Down Under for sure. But it's always good to catch up with what's going on. We are shifting now. We've been talking a lot about the cyclocross scene. Was so exciting to watch those races between Christmas and New Year's, and now the road racing really is going to start up. And I can't believe 2023 road racing is coming up right now. Big first European racing though starts towards 25th of February, so towards the end of February. So a little break after Tour Down Under before it really gets going again, but we'll always find plenty to talk about.
Always.
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
I just
and, one more. And you might as well until you get your camps full. You mentioned what we have on tap for you, and especially the big one. I think this doesn't come around too often. Is the Giro Sardinia race where you get to take a group over there. That's like one of your top favorite tours, probably, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure. That's just my favorite one. Yeah, you get to go over and you race on the Max Filly Italian team, and we get special kits made up, and we go over there and race an international stage race in Sardinia. So we spend a couple of days in Tuscany getting ready and doing some team bonding and riding there. And then we go to Sardinia. It's a 6-day stage race, international stage race, 4 road stages, a time trial, and a team time trial. And it's just, it's treated like an international stage race that it is. And so you race people from all over the world, mostly European countries, but usually there's a Canadian and a New Zealand and a Australian team, as well as our team from the U.S. And So yeah, it's a fantastic experience. So go to warrencycling.com, and there's also a gravel camp I'm doing. You can look up there too in Tennessee. So the Sardinia trip's in late April, the gravel camp's in early March. Yeah, warrencycling.com. Go there and you can check out those, and yeah, they're amazing. The Italian one especially, amazing experience. And if you want to go to that one,
you listen to our podcast, you'll know about these famous Italian racers now too that we're learning about. You can talk to the Italian competitors about them.
Well, one year the Italian winner of the Olympic road race was there, and she was like in her I don't know, mid-40s and just racing still because she loves to race, you know, and she won the Olympic road race in 2012 in London. So you know, yeah, you see people. I raced with Stephen Roche and Malcolm Elliott before there. Sometimes ex-World Tour pros, they just retired the year before. Even you have to be retired for a full year to be able to race if you're a UCI pro. So, but yeah, it's great. And along with any level, so there's definitely, you can be a rank amateur and come over there and race as well. And so they have racing and rides for every level, but it's just a fantastic experience.
And couldn't a spouse come though if they wanted to, and just enjoy hanging out and soaking up the ambience of that wonderful region?
Yep, sure. We have a non-racing rate too that doesn't include the race registration or the team kit, so you can definitely come, as well too. And we've had people obviously not race before too come as well too, but or they can just come in with a bike and ride if they want to ride, or just come and enjoy, you know, the Sardinia, which is one of the top destinations for, you know, like one of the hidden gems of the world for going on vacations and enjoying beautiful culture and beaches, and weather that time of year is fantastic, and so it's a great place to be.
Yeah, it's a blue zone too, where you have a big concentration of people that are living well into their hundreds, living to 100. So yeah, there's a few places around the world, and that's one of them. So you can get some tips on how to maybe extend your life by living like the Sardinians.
Yeah, it's a calmer. It's not, you know, I noticed more not Hummers, but more big SUVs in Tuscany these days, stuff like that too. And then you go to Sardinia, and you just see all the small cars still. The economy's not quite as robust there, and so you've got a simpler life there for sure. I recently saw a list of great places to eat around the world, and unusually, in the U.S., it just showed Albuquerque and Asheville, and a friend from Albuquerque is one that brought that to my attention. But Sardinia was one of the places as well up there too, as far as great places to eat in the world. So it's a great place to be for sure.
All right, excellent, Randy. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, thanks, Gene.
All right, bye now.
Bye.